You know, when the United States wants to send a message, it has a lot of ways to do it. But when that message needs to be delivered with speed, with force, and with zero ambiguity, well, that's when it often sends the Marines. So let's dive into what makes this particular fighting force so incredibly unique.
It all kicks off with a single ship on the move. But this isn't just any ship, you see. Its course sends these huge ripples through the world of geopolitics. So you have to ask yourself, what makes the movement of one vessel so significant that it demands our attention?
Because that ship is the USS Tripoli, an amphibious assault vessel. On board, 2,200 members of the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, and we're talking about one of the most battle-ready, rapid response forces on the entire planet. Their destination is a brewing conflict zone. And to really get why their movement matters so much, you first have to understand who the Marines really are.
Okay, so this whole journey begins right here, with a signal in the sea, a deliberate move that Washington knows the whole world is watching.
But to really get the full picture, we have to go back, way back, to the very beginning, to a story that starts, of all places, in a tavern.
The name itself really tells the story. Marine comes from the Latin word mare, for sea. So from the very beginning, they were conceived as soldiers of the sea, fighters whose entire world was the ocean and the coastlines it touched.
And man, they got to work fast. Founded in Philadelphia's Toon Tavern back in 1775, their first ever combat mission was an amphibious assault in the Bahamas just a few months later. And right there, it set a pattern that has defined them for over 2 centuries. Go in first, go in fast, and go where no one else can.
So what's their secret sauce? It's this structure, the Marine Air Ground Task Force, or MAGTF. It's basically a self-contained mini-military. It packs its own command, its own ground troops, its own air power, and its own logistics all into one unit. This is exactly why they can be combat-ready within hours and deploy from the sea without ever needing a friendly port. It's the engine that powers their first-to-fight motto.
And this unique capability wasn't just invented in a boardroom. It was forged in the fires of some of the 20th century's most brutal conflicts.
World War II in the Pacific. This is what made the Marines a legend. The island-hopping campaign was a methodical, incredibly bloody march across the ocean. And names like Guadalcanal, Tarawa, and Iwo Jima became synonymous with a level of ferocity that's almost unimaginable.
And nothing, I mean nothing, captures the spirit of that campaign better than this quote from Admiral Nimitz about Iwo Jima. In just 36 days, on a tiny volcanic island, the Marines suffered nearly 26,000 casualties. Uncommon valor was a common virtue. Wow, that says it all, doesn't it? Then came Korea, and one of the most audacious gambles in military history. The Incheon landing was considered almost suicidal because of these insane 30-foot tides. But the risk, it paid off big time. By landing deep behind enemy lines, the Marines captured Seoul and shattered the North Korean army, completely turning the tide of the war.
Korea also gave us this legendary line. Picture this, surrounded by 8 enemy divisions. At the freezing Chosin Reservoir, the Marines didn't surrender. No way. They fought their way out for 17 days. When asked about the retreat, their general's reply became immortal, perfectly capturing the Corps' defiant spirit.
But valor and defiance come at price, and not every conflict offered clear-cut victories. The Marines also learned some incredibly hard lessons about the nature of modern war.
Vietnam and Iraq taught the brutal lessons of urban warfare. The house-to-house fighting in Hue City and, decades later, in Fallujah were some of the most intense urban battles in modern history, testing the Marines in unforgiving terrain against a determined enemy.
And sometimes the highest price is paid far from a traditional battlefield. This number, 241, that represents the Marines killed in a single suicide bombing at their barracks in Beirut in 1983. It was their deadliest day since Iwo Jima.
But the crucial takeaway was the lesson learned. The tragedy in Beirut revealed a core truth. The Marines are a force designed for decisive action. Placing them in an ambiguous peacekeeping mission without clear military objectives left them tragically vulnerable.
This also demonstrates just how adaptable they are. In the 1991 Gulf War, their biggest contribution was pure theater. They staged a massive amphibious feint, tricking Saddam Hussein into pinning 5 divisions on the coast to repel an invasion that never came. Meanwhile, the real coalition attacks swept in from the west, routing the Iraqi army. It was a masterpiece of deception.
So how does all this history build into the 21st century force now sailing towards a potential conflict?
Well, the Corps is in the middle of a massive transformation. It's called Force Design 2030, and it's a radical shift away from the heavy armor of past decades. They are retooling to become a lighter, faster force, armed with long-range anti-ship missiles, specifically designed to counter near-peer adversaries in potential island chain conflicts across the Pacific.
And they remain busy, globally, putting these new concepts into practice. Whether it's maritime interdiction in the Caribbean to disrupt trafficking networks, or deploying these newly formed marine littoral regiments to hotspots in the Pacific, the mission is constant adaptation to new and evolving global threats.
Which brings us right back to where we started. With all this history and capability in mind, the movement of the USS Tripoli sends an unmistakable message. So why send them to the region now? An amphibious assault ship isn't just for air power, it's a platform for putting troops on the ground. This creates several options: securing vital facilities like the Strait of Hormuz, being ready for a rapid evacuation of citizens, or even preparing for a larger ground operation. Ultimately, it's about having a credible, forceful choice on the table.
For nearly 250 years, their mission has been guided by this simple, powerful motto: Semper Fidelis, always faithful, to the nation, to the Corps, and to each other.
And so, when you understand their history, their structure, and their ethos, that signal from the sea becomes crystal clear. When a crisis demands not just a response, but a swift and decisive answer, who else gets the call?